Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. It's finally Saturday, and I know you've all been looking forward to more stories. Tonight, we have 3 scary Mortician stories. But first, regarding to the community post and tweet I made recently, here are the top 10 channels I'd like to recommend. Now, none of these are in order, and if your channel didn't make it on this list, it's nothing personal, and whether you've listed your channel to me, or are starting a new channel at all, my advice to you is to keep pushing and stay motivated for what content you want to do that makes you happy. Now, let's start off with number 1, Just Plain Creepy. His videos are pretty well done. His voice is subtly deep and creepy in a way that trances you into his stories. I highly recommend you go check it out. Number 2, Groinkick Studios. The intro to his videos are well thought out, and his editing was done quite well for his own video content before the story, along with the great sound effects. Highly recommend as he continues his journey on YouTube. Number 3, Beyond the Veil Investigations. They delve deep into their own investigations of haunted locations, and is determined to capture proof inside of these places of spirits. Their editing is top-notch in my opinion, and I enjoy following these two as they go through different locations. Number 4, Chrisriana Garcia. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Now, to jump a bit from scary stories to stoner stories. I know there are quite a few stoners in my community, and for you, you definitely enjoy this channel quite a bit, as she talks about her personal stories about cannabis, and it's just relaxing. Number 5, Muerto Animations. Again, I apologize if I butchered it. Has only just began their channel, but I highly enjoy their animations they've created so far to go along with the stories. I definitely recommend you subscribe to enjoy future animations. Number 6, Cornish Paranormal Investigators C.P.I. is another channel who also investigates a lot of haunted places, and is more than definitely worth a watch and a sub. Number 7, Demon Creep hooked me as soon as I heard his voice. Very deep yet mysterious at the same time. I was instantly hooked on his stories. I would highly recommend you subscribe to his channel. They are very good. Number 8, SomberReads always jokes about being the tree in my intro. He is always watching over the wolfpack in the woods, just so you guys know. I highly recommend a sub to his channel. Number 9, Penny Tailsup. She is not only my female counterpart to my channel, but takes a lot of time to make her content with her amazing speed paints to go along with her stories. Sub to her to enjoy current and future projects of hers. Number 10, finally, we have Lady Spookaria, who actually just reached 1,000 subscribers. Congratulations. I personally enjoy her narrations, and she's been very supportive in the horror community. I highly recommend you go and check out her channel. With that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. I wheeled in the corpse as Dr. Avery talked to the detective. The smell of formaldehyde made my empty stomach roll. Shit, why did they bring in the body so close to lunchtime? I could almost taste the leftover veal before they dragged me back in here. Who was the poor bastard anyway? The cops won't tell us anything. A quick Google search of missing people in the area does the job, but it's just nice to have the trust. I needed to take a peek first to figure out who it is. I uncovered the face, and staring at me was gray, hazy eyes. Long brown hair hung in patches on her pale scalp. Her face was gaunt from starvation, and a birthmark covered half of her cheek. The corpse's mouth was slightly agape, showing yellow teeth, and the smell of death and rotten meat came wafting out. I closed my eyes and covered the corpse. I didn't need to look up who this was. Her face has been plastered on every screen for the past 3 weeks. It was Diane Faye. I remember seeing pictures of her on TV, her baby daughter clinging to her chest. I hope I don't have to wheel in a smaller corpse. Alright, let's get started. Dr. Avery boomed as he walked in. Avery, this is Diane Faye, I murmured, still not lifting up my eyes. I know, Detective Hardin told me, Avery said as he wiggled his hands into his glove. Doesn't matter who she is. Procedure doesn't change. I thought they weren't allowed to tell us anything. They aren't allowed to tell you anything. I've been doing this for years. They know I'll keep my trap shut. Avery pulled off the blanket completely and started the examination of her neck. Apparently, they still haven't found the kid yet. No bruising around the neck. I grabbed my pen and paper and wrote down, "No bruising on neck." I watched as Avery gingerly felt Faye's swollen stomach. She almost looked pregnant. Avery then started to examine her limbs. "I think Diane's starved," I said. "Maybe. The bloated abdominal region is strange though." Avery moved down between Faye's legs, took a pair of tweezers, then plucked a few hairs and placed them on a tray. It doesn't look like there were any forced entry and no bruising anywhere, but the soles of her feet looks like she's been barefoot these past few weeks. "Why'd you pluck the hairs if she wasn't forced?" "From my own collection." Avery looked at me, waiting for a laugh. "It was a joke, trying to keep things light here. You never know what you find down there." "This is screwed up, Dr. Avery. You shouldn't joke about it." "I'm sure the corpse will forgive me," Avery mumbled as he went to sterilize his tools. "Her name is Diane Faye." "Her name was Diane Faye. She's dead now. Words won't hurt her feelings." Avery walked to the corpse with his tools, ready to dissect. "How can you be so nonchalant about this? Once you worked as long as I have, you start to understand that you can't humanize the bodies." Avery preached while making the first cut. We stopped chatting after that. The silence was only broken when Avery barked something he wanted me to write. "I think she died of refeeding syndrome," Avery announced. "The kidnappers probably locked her in a room with her kid and never gave them any food. Eventually, they figured to give her something, and then boom, she dies. If the mother almost starved, it doesn't look good for the kid." "Oh." I was at a loss for words. "I'm going to cut open the stomach and esophagus to see what she ate. Maybe it'll help us find these sons of bitches." I waited for a moment, waiting for Dr. Avery to bark out another order, but he didn't. I looked up from the notepad and saw Avery was staring at something in his hand. He then looked at Diane's face. He quickly dropped it, and then ran out of the room. The door closed as the sound of vomiting started. "Avery! Avery! What's wrong?" The sound of dry heaving was followed by Avery's shaky voice. "For the love of God, don't look at that body! I'm getting hardened!" I stood, frozen as the sound of Avery's hurried footsteps started to fade. I walked closer to see what horrifying thing Avery dropped. I wish I didn't. I wish I had listened to him, because on the floor, I found what must have been lodged in Diane's throat. It was a tiny finger, a baby's finger. When I was 6, I remember my teacher telling me that thunder was clouds bumping together. He was proud when he told me that. I took it at face value. It's amazing what you believe at such a young age. When I was helping my father work and lightning struck, filling the room with a bright light, illuminating the bodies that lay peacefully on the benches, I told him. He could see I was scared. I hated helping him. I dreaded it. "Don't be an idiot," he said, and went back to his work. It was my job to wash them. I had a sponge and a bucket. I'd count each stroke, knowing that it was one less I needed to do, and one less until I could finish and get out of that place. If I had to say, I'd say that I preferred the women. They reminded me of my mom. She was quiet and never made a fuss. I wished I could spend more time with her, instead of there in the cold room filled with steel cupboards. The men just reminded me of my dad. Some of them stank. It got easier over time, but that's not something a 6-year-old should be put through. It messes you up. My dad was a mortician. He worked out of the building next to our house. It was a large square structure that had all the charm of the occupants inside. It was probably the best job for him. He couldn't have been a doctor. His bedside manners were less than desirable. Sometimes the bodies would begin to sit up and gasp. I never got used to that. I'd stand petrified when my father would swear to himself, run over, and force them back down. I'd hear cracks of what I thought were bones as the bodies resisted. "It's bacteria and gas," he shouted. "Nothing to be afraid of." The air would fill with a putrid odor, and I'd heave. "You have to man up," he'd say, and I'd think I was a disappointment. I knew I was when he gave me earmuffs, pink ones, almost as if to degrade me, like the bodies that sat there on those slabs. I remember going to school, and my classmates, that's not the right word. They were hardly my friends. They'd say I smelled. I'd shower before bed and in the morning, but nothing can get rid of that stench. It was as if I was a prisoner at home and in school. Solitary confinement. I became numb to it. By age 12, my father was showing me how to perform the Y incision. He'd hold my hand and drag the knife down the chest. I'd shake and sweat at first, but over time, it was me pulling the knife and my father only guiding. "You're really good at this," he said to me, with genuine pride in his voice. It had been so long since he'd praised me. I didn't know what the feeling was that rose in my stomach. I'd lived for that, but only seldom did it come. I wanted him to be proud of me, so I'd get there before he did, and practice. I'd slide the metal drawer out, too small and weak to pick the bodies up and place them on the slabs. I'd undo the stitches he had done the night before, and then sew them myself, training myself so I could impress him. I'd fix up the equipment to drain them, watch as the red liquid dripped into the bucket below, the staccato slap before the flow began. I'd always be tempted to dip my finger in and take a little taste, as the copper smell rose up, making my teeth hurt. At some point, I did. It was reminiscent of when I bit my tongue after falling off my bike. I didn't get a taste for it. I grew to ignore the groans and moans. At first, I'd slam the drawer shut and hide. Sometimes, my father would emerge at the bottom of the stairs. I'd wait in the darkness for him to do his cheeks, then emerge from my hiding place to continue my nocturnal work. Over time, though, I knew there was nothing they could do to me, so I let them moan. It's just bacteria. I'd laugh when they did it, come to enjoy it. Sometimes, I'd take the opportunity to slice off their tongue. I hid these in a box under my bed. A child of 12 shouldn't be doing things like that. I graduated from school at 16. It was as if I had Stockholm Syndrome. I knew I could leave home, but I didn't want to. I knew where I wanted to be. My mother said I should get a job, make some friends. It wasn't normal for a kid of my age to be so obsessed. All I could wonder was why hadn't she said that when I was 6? A day after my 17th birthday, I met James. He'd moved in down the street and was well into computer games such as I. He invited me over, and for the first time in my life, I experienced what I could equate to friendship. What disturbed me was thinking about what his insides looked like. I wondered how heavy his heart was. I surmised it must weigh a lot, as he seemed to have so much love to give. I did my best to shake these feelings. Father wasn't happy when I told him I was going to stay the night. Mom and him argued for hours. James and I stayed up late playing Mario Kart. I was terrible. My hands had been trained for something very different. When he fell asleep on the couch, I just watched him sleep. He woke screaming as I loomed down on top of him. I held him in place, telling him to be quiet. I held my hand over his mouth until he calmed down. "Please, promise you won't scream?" I asked, and he nodded. Slowly, I removed my hand. My heart was thumping, and I could feel his thump hard too. His breathing calmed down and he spoke. "I like you, but not that way," he said softly. It took me a moment to understand, and a relief washed over me. He had no idea what I was going to do. I walked home that night and laid in my own bed thinking. Over the coming days, Dad would ask for help, and I'd turn him down. He was upset, to start with. I could see my proud father turn into a stranger, until the point he ignored me entirely. Mom set me up interviews with some of the local businesses. I took a job at a gas station, night shift. It was when I felt the most comfortable. "You should get your own place," she offered. At the time, I thought she wanted to get rid of me, but knowing what I know now, she wanted me to have freedom, a life of my own. So I did. Over the years, the macabre thoughts began to subside. The damage that had been done to me as a child began to repair itself. I ended up working in the fashion industry. All that sewing didn't go to waste after all. A year ago, Mom told me Dad had left her. She didn't sound upset though. I flew her up to see me. She ended up getting a job down the road from mine, and I had a relationship with her I could only dream about when I was a child. Today, she phoned me. She wasn't upset, more resigned. She said Dad had been in a car accident. She said someone needed to identify the body. She asked if it was okay if I did it. I told her that was fine. She never helped out with Dad's business, so wasn't used to it, and besides, I don't think she wanted to see him again anyways. It was oddly familiar standing in that room with steel tables and steel cupboards. A man in a lab coat saw me waiting and asked me to confirm who I was. "He's in a bit of a state. Are you sure you'll be okay?" he asked. He had a much better bedside manner than my father. I nodded. "Yeah, I'll be fine. My dad was a mortician too. I used to help him out when I was a child." The man smiled and led me into a room. He let me pull back the sheets. I gasped a little when I saw his face. It was him, or what was left of him at least. His chest appeared crushed under the sheet. I left him his dignity. That's him all right," I said. "Thank you." The man replied and wrote something on his clipboard. "Say, how do you keep this place so quiet?" He looked up and chuckled. "Well, the residents here don't talk much. But the ones that are still moving, where do you keep them?" He gave me a strange look. "Well, if they are moving, they hardly belong here, do they?" he said, trailing off. That's when it hit me. I don't think my dad was a mortician after all. My mother runs the leading funeral home in our semi-small West Virginia town and is the mortician there. Has been since she was 18, impressively. My mom's water broke with me mid-viewing, and she literally birthed me at the funeral home. So I've been there my entire life. I'm tasked now that I'm older to help my mom out around the funeral home. When I say my mom knows everyone in town, she really does. Everywhere we go together locally, guaranteed she would run into people to stop and talk. They gush over how special of a person she is. My mom is extraordinary, especially for what she does for a living. "Are you going to be a mortician one day, just like your wonderful mother?" this sweet older lady asked me. My response was only a quick sour face, then a timid smile, but 100% would never do it. I was passionate about wanting to be a teacher anyways. My best friend Jules chuckled at my face towards the older lady's comment. Jules doesn't mind hanging out in a funeral home with me, which is nice. Jules is my age, and we've been best friends since we were kids. We're going to the same college in the fall, and even rooming together. Working in the death business is one thing, but growing up with it is another. My mother and I live on top of the funeral home, and it was terrifying. And I enjoyed growing up there. I was allowed to venture within reason, but there was a room I was never allowed to go in, the embalming room. As you walk down the stairs from our apartment upstairs, you're met with an elegant and peaceful ambiance from the main sitting room, and behind that was the viewing room. Typical old-fashioned funeral parlor. The door to the basement where the embalming room was, though, always felt a little off. I assumed that this was due to the nature behind the door. I knew dead bodies were laying down there, and harsh chemicals, so that could throw a person off. Maybe. The craving was unbearable of wanting to go down those stairs and see what's in that room, just for a mere fact that I wasn't allowed in. Sometimes, I felt like the door was a siren, and I was the fisherman being lured to it. Yet, I could not bring myself to go down there by myself. It was a giant dark brown wooden door with a bright red doorknob. The feeling of the door when you got close to it was profoundly wicked, which was weird because it was just a door. For a single mother, raising and fully supporting me while working full-time, my mom did a fantastic job. She is like Superwoman, but drains the blood from dead bodies sliced open nearby vein, or from the heart, among other things in the procedure. My mom is involved in the community, of course, doing charity or volunteer work wherever she can. On Sunday nights, though, she always had a meeting she could not miss with a man she never introduced to me, and I've only heard about him. When I would question what she was doing, she would simply answer business matters. With her gentle, warming smile, I never felt the need to probe further. Last Sunday night, when my mom went off to her meeting, Jules was really in the mood for an adventure. My mom usually gets back around midnight, and it was 8 p.m. now. So I sucked up my fear at the door, and we decided to venture in this time. "Let's just go down there and take a quick peek," Jules said eagerly. So we went. I made Jules open the door. It creaked so abnormally loud. The air was musty, seeping from the darkness that sat below. The temperature dropped dramatically as well, just because dead bodies were being preserved down there. This didn't bother us that much. Our tiptoes touched the first step, slowly adjusting, taking each step one by one, and our arms interlocked. We were finally going to see the room, and have this hanging mystery closed. The light from upstairs was the only thing guiding us down. "We need to turn on the light switch, or I'm gonna fall," I mumbled. Jules said nothing. I took my arm away from hers and found the light switch once we hit the bottom step. Weird that there was not a light switch at the top, but that thought dissolved quickly. I flipped on the light, turning to Jules with a smile on my face. She was gone. I glanced up at the door, and it was closed. I didn't hear it even close at all. Panic started to grow in my stomach. I felt my palms get clammy. Screaming Jules' name to no avail. This didn't make any sense. Glancing around, I started hearing movement from the dark corner of the room. The light switch I turned on only illuminated the front part of the embalming room, with two bodies in front of me, male and female. I recognized only one. It was Jules. Tears started forming in my eyes. She couldn't be dead. How did she get on the table? My mouth was starting to get hot with nervousness. The movement in the corner got louder and almost felt like it was vibrating the floor. I began to run. The door wouldn't open, yet I should have been expecting that. Movement getting louder, screaming generally and my mom's name repeatedly. "Please open the frickin' door, I'm gonna die down here!" "No, you're not," my mom said, gently smiling at the bottom of the stairs. I turned with fear. Movement from the corner was silent now. From the top of the stairs looking down, the entire room was lit up. "How did you get down here?" I whispered to my mother. "I was down here the whole time," she said, gleaming. Then he appeared behind my mom, as if he was a shadow on her. Smoke slowly moved from her body to form the shape of a man with dark angel wings behind him. "Who in the F?" "This is T," my mom explained as if she was reading my mind. "T is who I go out with on Sundays," she continued. "See, honey? This job isn't just being a mortician. I have a partnership with T." Confused, and can hear my heart thumping through my ears, I glanced over to T's face to see if I could distinguish who this man was. After a moment, my brain clicked. He wasn't human. T is the god of death. He is the concept and embodiment of death itself. I was chosen by the gods to deliver fresh souls to him here when I was 18. We made a deal to make my life pure happiness, and he gave me you as a child to complete it, she explained. "Now, it's your turn," T said with a low voice. My turn?" I spit out with horror. "Now that you are 18, it is your turn to take over this position and fulfill the partnership with T. You are meant to open the door tonight. It is now your time." My mom beamed. I tried to pinch myself to get out of this nightmare. That couldn't be real. I glanced over to Jules' lifeless body, still on the embalming table. "What about Jules?" I demanded. "You need 2 people, one male and one female, to give to T every Sunday night. If you do not deliver your soul will evaporate at midnight to be tortured in the underworld for eternity," my mom concluded before walking up the stairs towards me to hug me. "No, please, this can't be real," I muttered with tears rolling down my face. Before I knew it, T hovered over both of them, inhaling their souls. I fell to the ground. T shot me a look afterwards, the first time I could see his eyes, and they locked into mine. Then my mind went dark. I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I felt different. I didn't feel sad or confused. I felt confident and happy. My movements felt forced, like doing this job has been my routine for years. It's been a whole week since I took over. You know what that means. It's Sunday. I got a head start with landing a male I met at the grocery store earlier, and he's on the embalming table, ready to go for the god of death. I ran into that sweet older lady who asked me if I wanted to be just like my wonderful mother, grinning ear to ear, inviting her over for some tea. I am going to be just like her and stay in the family business. Staring at T through the window of the funeral home, I turned happily towards the sweet lady. I am the Mortician now. Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.